of July. I am coming off a really exciting week at V1 Sports headquarters. It was a strategy meeting with the leadership team in our company, and we have some really exciting things planned for the rest of the year and leading up to the next year's PGA show, including new product launches and new updates to the V1 Pro software and mobile apps. That is absolutely all I'm allowed to say about that, because you guys know I can't keep a secret, and Anna will really have to edit this video if I go any further about the new products or the software updates. I do want to brag about my new swag. I'm wearing my Team V1 shirt, Team Von See, Team V1. It was an awesome meeting last week. We're all really fired up. If you didn't already know, V1 Sports is a 26-year-old company and the leader in delivering video analysis, instruction solutions, and ground force technologies to athletes and coaches around the world. In those 26 years, we have supported over 4 million lessons and 10,000 V1 affiliated golf coaches / family members like the one you see on your screen with me tonight. We are passionate about supporting your golf and baseball business. I am Mandy Von See. I am the Southeast Regional Sales Manager for V1 Sports. Born, raised, and based in Charleston, South Carolina, just a quick 5-hour drive from Hotlanta, where Mr. Mike Berning is. It's a really exciting time in our industry right now, and I couldn't be more grateful to be able to provide V1 Sports tools to the golf instructors and my friends in our industry. I'm really passionate about hosting this Tuesday Traces webinar every other week. I love talking about how we're using the technology. I beg these guys to do this with me all the time. It's taken me months to talk Mr. Berning into joining us, but I'm really excited that he has found an hour in his very busy schedule to do this tonight. So we're going to see some cool tech tonight. Let's see, if just a few housekeeping things. Welcome to everyone that has joined us via the Zoom webinar link. We record all these webinars. As you know, we post them to our YouTube channel after Anna edits the recording. That takes her about 2 or 3 days. If you have registered, you will automatically get the link. If you haven't registered and you're joining us from Facebook, just shoot an email over to me or any of the girls in the chat window, and we'll get you a copy of the recording. I'm sure it will be awesome. We love answering questions throughout the evening, so please post them in the chat window. We will do our best to get to all of them, even the silly ones, if Mike is okay with that. Okay, so the reason I say that Mike is so busy is because he is the director of instruction at the Marietta Country Club. Mike joined the V1 family over 10 years ago in 2010. He is one of my clients, and I check on him regularly. He's one of the best golf instructors in the industry, and I'm really, really, really grateful that I get to work with him. Mike also uses the best technology in the biz. He has 2 bays in the bay that we're looking at that he's sitting in now, which is weird to see his garage door shut. I've never seen it shut because he teaches all the time. But he has a V1 pressure mat. He has a 4-camera system, of course, the V1 Pro Studio, and he's got a floor monitor. Mike, welcome to Tuesday Traces. Thank you very much for letting us crash your studio for an hour.
Well, thank you. Actually, I've been a V1 member since 2001.
2001? 20 years?
2001.
Boy, I screwed up my numbers. That's amazing. So what did the system look like 20 years ago?
Prior to me switching or switching now?
Switching, but it didn't look like that. The cameras were a little bigger, right? 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah. So 20 years ago, it was security cameras. We were inside because I was at the Atlanta Athletic Club. So we were inside. Each side had 3 cameras. So it was a little slower. Definitely not 4 cameras. So there's a lot less information you can give.
Right.
So now with what we have now, it's, you know, I find it hard to imagine that it can get better. I'm sure it can, but I find it hard to imagine it could get better.
Well, you know, you have a system that not a lot of people have. The 4-camera system that we'll see is pretty cool. So a lot of people are going to strive for what you have, because I think you have pretty close to the best. But before we get there, you grew up in New York. You've been in Atlanta for a really, really, really long time.
Yeah.
How did you get from New York down to Hotlanta into golf?
Well, the story of it is that I left New York to become a VP of construction operations for McPartland Roofing. And I did that for a 5-year contract. I left and went to work at Club Med. McPartland hired me back, and I went back for about a 6-month stint. When I left, I got into the golf business full-time in 1992. So next year will be my 30th year.
30th year teaching golf.
30th year teaching golf.
So back then when you started, what technology were you using? Because I mean, videos first.
So I was unique in the fact that I had a trolley, or what, I don't know what you want to call it, a dolly maybe,
Yep.
that had a TV and 2 VHS tapes, that hooked in there, the VCRs, and so I could draw on the TV screen. I didn't have lines, so it was just a dry erase marker and me drawing.
That is so
That's
cool.
what we started with.
Boy, we've come a long way, right? So you don't have very much bio information on the internet. I always try to go dig up
No.
stuff about you, and I try to ask people about you. Everybody in Atlanta knows you, but I did find your LinkedIn profile statement, which I think is really cool. And I'm going to read it to everyone. It says, to improve the well-being of others through the game of golf, I do not view my current position as a job, but as a vocation.
That's
and
correct.
I think that's pretty cool, especially for someone that's so dedicated to the number of hours a day that you teach golf. Can you talk to that and why that is your profile statement?
Yeah, so, and I said this at a board meeting 2 years ago for the Georgia PGA, because I sit on the Georgia PGA board and the president of the senior board. I think jobs are something that we have to get us through the day. I think your vocation is your love and your passion, and the money is something that comes alongside with it. And look, I know that's tough because everybody at some point in their life needs a job. So I'm here. If I could be here 24/7, I would be. I love it. I've never come to work dreading being here. I do know that there's some students that are harder than others. But at the end of the day, think about what we do. We work with people to play a game.
Yep.
That's it. I get paid, right now $120 an hour to teach someone how to hit a white golf ball. I applied for a position a year and a half ago that was looking at around 850,000. And I thought to myself, okay, so I'm going to make that money, and the school teacher 40 miles down the road is going to make 46,000. And I told my wife, I said, this is crazy. This is crazy. That I'm teaching someone to hit a golf ball. So I don't know. I'm blessed. I'm real lucky. I'm thankful for the people I have, especially here at Marietta Country Club. I mean, they've been great.
Well, and in that region, there's a very special golf community, and I know all of your students adore you, but not only that, your peers do. I know there's a bunch of people in Atlanta that are big fans of your work. I know that for sure. Having ripped the cameras out of the Atlanta Athletic Club that you installed, I personally did those upgrades. So yes, it's a nice thing to see you teach, to be in your room. I'll tell everybody, I don't really get to talk to Mike, and I don't ever get to visit with him, literally, unless I just show up during a lesson. And I feel kind of bad doing that, but that's how we have to work with Mike, is while he's teaching, and we go into that bay and we fumble around and work on chords while there's a student standing there, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, if people are looking to come on my lunch break, I don't have one. I get one on the way home. I figure it out. When I get here, I start, and when I go home, I'm done. That's the day.
Yep. All right, let's talk about that environment a little bit. How often do you turn on your V1 video analysis system and use it in your lessons throughout the day?
It's the whole time. So
The whole time.
So V1's going the whole time. The mats either on or not on. I'll drag it off the mat. It just depends on what I want people to see. A lot of times I'll have the mat, they'll be standing on the mat, but I'll pull the charts and pressure measurements away because I don't want them to see it.
Right.
You know, but the V1's on, whether or not I show somebody something, you know, that it just depends on the player. So,
Right.
you know, a lot of times if I'm out on the grass with them, you know, I may pull it up on my phone.
Right.
You know, so I'll use my phone or my iPad a lot.
And so you're doing a lot, your instruction is very real time. Like you're very much giving students data real time in the studio. They're seeing themselves on the floor monitor. They're seeing the data, the pressure mat data. And do you go back during those lessons and show them old videos from a month or a year or 2 years ago?
Again, it depends. I can't say never, but like the person that I had today, I showed him a video from when he started, right? And I probably should have saved it someplace because you'll probably ask me that next, but I didn't. But it took me a little while to find it because I don't categorize my students. I don't type their names in each time. I do it on the one system. I don't do it on the other one. A lot of my tracking is how they play, how they practice, and how they're getting better. So a lot of stuff comes to me on my phone.
Okay, I love that. And how has video, this is a generic question, but how has video added to your coaching? Could you teach without video? Could you do that?
Could I teach without video? I could teach without video. It depends on the player. I mean, I've got some players that don't want to see it, right? Hey, I don't want to look at it. I just help me get better doing this. I'm trying to shape the golf ball. And then I may not look at it. You know, I'm in a spoiled environment because a lot of my members have video at home. They have launch monitors at home. They have simulators in their house. I mean, we have 17 members with.
Yeah, and you have some that have pressure mats. Yeah.
Have pressure mats in their house. So, you know, just making sure they look at the correct information. In other words, you know, we've enabled all these people to record themselves and do things like that. And they may be looking at a video where the camera's not set up correctly, or they didn't let the pressure mat recenter as they were in their setup. You know, and that'll give them kind of a false reading.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things. So I'm weary of it when they set it up at their house.
But you have me to help with that, Mike.
No, I look, I understand it. You get it installed.
Right. You just have to make sure they're filming and using the videos correctly.
Right. They gotta look at the information correctly.
Right.
You know,
okay. Let's talk about the pressure mat really quickly. You've had the mat for about 5 years, which is way longer than a lot of people that have been on Tuesday Traces. And I think you just saw a demo with Scott Hamilton and Gary Palace at the PGA show. Is that right? Is that how you were introduced to it?
That's how I was introduced to the blue mat that we took into the bunker, and we did that. And you know, Scotty and I were standing outside the room and we were talking, and Gary showed it to us, and that's how we ended up with them. I mean, Scott bought 6 and I bought 1. I felt about that big. But I mean, you know, I was like, there's only one of me. I can only use one.
You don't need 6 mats. You don't need 6 mats. He's got all those LPGA tour players. Actually, Kelly Hurst, who's our director of marketing, her sister Vicky works with Scott on the mat. So we see him throwing those mats all over the place. And so how often do you use the ground pressure data in your lessons, and how has that added to your coaching?
All right, say that again.
How often are you using the pressure mat, and how has it added to your lessons?
Well, so, and you'll see it. So it's faults, fixes, and then a pattern. So if people stay in a pattern and they can repeat a pattern. Whether the pattern's good or bad by other teachers, it's irrelevant. It's a pattern and the person's going to stay in it. So it's been said a million times by a million other people, it's hard to get a good golfer to make the pressure mat look like a mixed plate of spaghetti. And I would agree with that. At the same time, you're not going to get the guy on there the first time or girl on there the first time, and they're going to have a vertical line straight back and it works into the left heel. So that's not going to be a first time go. You're going to, that may be 10 drills later and all of a sudden they feel something totally different. And all of a sudden they do it and they're like, oh, I moved it over there,
Right.
And that's really what I'll talk about tonight is just really 4 or 5 of the people I worked with today, and what they saw, and what they didn't see. I mean, I use the pressure because I know if their pressure is misleading, then there's a fault that is accompanying with that. So I'm a big believer in 3D capture. I won't say that I use it with every student. I use it very, very selectively because again, how are they going to use it when they leave?
Right. That's a really interesting thing though, to make a point, to see a fault that you diagnose through a trace and to fix that versus you never knowing the fault and you're dealing with this and it may be okay, but to be aware of it and it might be an easy fix, right? That's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason. So in a trace, there's a reason a trace starts in a direction, changes back to the trail foot, goes back to the lead foot, right? Mm-hmm. So something is happening in that person's mind. Either the right side gives way, they're trying to pull the club down at the golf ball, which if anyone has a Webster's dictionary, you can't pull a club at a golf ball unless you're inside of it. So I don't believe that happens. A lot of people can argue with me, but I don't believe it's physically possible by the definition of the word pull. But what'll happen is it'll bounce the trace back and forth, right? So the trace will start going this way. The person will try to pull as hard as they can with their lead arm. The spine or the body will start to shift to the right. The trace will go back to that side and then it'll quickly go back to the other side. So.
Yep. Okay. So Mike, I want to get into your videos, but I really want to talk about how you're teaching. Most coaches teach with just down the line and face on camera views. You have a cool setup. You have a 4-camera setup and you're using you're using the other 2 as overhead and behind, not lefty face on. So can you talk to us about that system, brag about it a little bit, why it helps you, why it's so cool? And then we of course want to see that.
Okay. So overhead does a couple of things. One, it'll show the direction of movement as the person starts out of the top. So again, for a righty, the righty starts to lean right? For pressure trace, I wouldn't use another view. If I'm going to show somebody their pressure trace, I'm always showing them the back of their, middle of their back, the small of their back, right? And I'm showing them overhead so that the trace lines up with what they see, rather than me saying, oh, it's opposite on the screen. That doesn't make any sense, especially to kids. Try to explain that to a 10-year-old and it's going to be a tough day. So it makes it real quick. I can say, hey, move the little white ball to the right. Now move it to the left. Now I want it to go left, right, left real quick. Now I want you to do it while you swing. So I think that's something you got to watch for. I think the other thing is that when you're watching traces, it's very important that the player goes to their lead side first. They've got to go lead side first. So, I mean, if you look at other sports, pitchers lean in. Mm-hmm. No pitcher stands on the rubber and leans back towards second. they all lead in, they use that leg to move direction.
So I love talking about this, Mike, because we talk about a lot about the lower body, right? And what our heels and toes are doing with the ground.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of instructors show me in their studio how the conversation can be so important and impactful when you do that from the ground, but you also have a conversation about the movement of your head or swaying. It's not necessarily the head, right? It's the fact that you can see your head moving from an overhead camera.
They can, correct.
So I think that's super fascinating. I'd love for you to, one more thing, guys. Mike does a very live lesson. So he's very much giving students data in a live scenario. So they're swinging out of that bay right behind them. He's talking about pressure, overhead cameras, but they are looking at themselves in a floor monitor that is directly in front of them. So these students are not having to come out of their posture at all. And they are seeing 4 cameras and pressure mat and the video data at the same time. I think your lesson experience is really spectacular. And so we'd love to see it. I mean, and I just wanted to point out that other piece for students to be able to see what you're talking about is really cool. So can you share, and if you go to your studio, guys, I'm gonna sort of help make sure we get this clicked through. Studio or in Zoom, hit the green share. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so we are looking at your studio. It might be a little delayed, but hopefully it'll catch up.
Right. So, all right. So, did I lose you?
Nope.
Okay.
Woo!
So, at the start of a day, right, obviously that door's open. Right, so the door's open, and so that's my screen every day. You know, so I'm looking at all those screens. It's dark in here right now because obviously the bay's closed. But as the face on camera for the righty and face on camera for the lefty are on the right hand side, and then I have the down the line and over the top on the bottom left. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
That overhead cam view is so cool. That is so cool. I love that we're showing this. I hope everybody is just blown away like I am. Oh, I love it.
So typically when I come in or when I get with a player, right? I apologize right up front, but sometimes I'm going to look away from the camera because I'm trying to drive my machine over here.
No, it's okay, Mike, because your face video is small. We can see your big studio very big, and that's perfect.
When I'm over here, just like I was today, as I'm watching this, as I start to go in and I'm watching video to watch how somebody moves or if they don't move, right? Then I've got to match that up with how I believe motion should work, right? So I'm gonna put this up here. So if the player all right, there you go. So if the player like here, Ben, right?
Yep.
As he first starts to go, you'll notice 99% of my players are always going to start lead side when the ball's on the ground.
Okay.
I won't say every player, but 99% of them are lead side when the ball's on the ground. So now as they go into motion, right? Ben's back, right? So that's the top of his backswing. Now, you got to remember, back when I was learning to play golf, that was a reverse pivot. They would see a spine that was more vertical than tilted to the right. So people would say that that's the reverse pivot, but he's got more pressure on his right foot right there. If you look, he's at 62. He's 60-40 bias in the right heel, and then he's 68-32 in the left toe.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because his feet are going to move off the ground. Okay. So he's a Justin Thomas guy, right? So as the club starts to come down and he gets into, for some reason I got off here. But as the club starts to come down and he starts to go into that toe, what I'm looking for is how fast he can go from toe to heel. And so in this video right here, he stays in the toe too long.
Because don't you want him a little bit more in his heel at impact?
Yeah, so, but I want him as he's doing this, right, as he's doing this, the change that we're trying to make, and again, it's not simple. He swings the club over 120 miles an hour. He was a junior in high school. And so what happens is he really loads the left toe too long. I don't mind that he loads the left toe because I want him to push as hard as he can away from his body with the left toe, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he's going to be more of a lateral guy than a rotational guy, right? So,
yep.
You know, that's, and again, that's where, you know, that's where you start to see on the velocity one, you know, you've got a lot of lateral right here, but I'll hide those. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mandy, I don't like my students looking at those very much. I don't like them to see the little heart monitor down there. But what I'll do is I'll sit there and give him drills, punch shot drills. His fault was always that he swung the club too far to the left. So I don't want it to get going left again. Mm-hmm. So I have to move him a lot slower than other people.
Yeah. And I agree with that, Mike. I'm a beginner golfer, as you know, and if you started talking to me about that dynamic vertical force and the linear velocity versus only having a conversation with me about the weather mapping map that I'm looking at, there's just too many things in the golf swing for me to understand. So, you know, there are golf instructors that are using those, and we have a director of sports science, Phil Stoddard, who is going to give us all great education on those graphs. But until then, I'm with you. I'm glad they're there for the golf instructors that know how to read them and give that data to a student at a high level. But I am with you. I like this view. Hey, I have a great question. And especially since you're looking at this view, it's from Kevin McLaughlin, who always tunes in and asks great questions. His question is shaft plane line versus elbow plane line. Which has more benefits when analyzing our swings?
Okay. So I would say it's 50-50. And here's why. So I'm not going to take a side on it. Shaft plane is extremely important. Your right elbow is the key to golf.
For a right-handed golfer?
For a right-handed player, your right elbow is so important. Because, see, you're not, baseball and golf, I want you to think about both of those sports. So in both those sports, you're swinging an object. In baseball, right? In baseball, we're trying to move it perpendicular, parallel to the ground, rather, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stay on top of the baseball and drive it out there. So in golf is not a sport of hitting a baseball. It's throwing sidearm. So if you're going to look at someone to skip a rock or throw sidearm, the right elbow is the most important thing. The player's elbow must be back in front of the body. So when I'm looking at elbow plane and shaft playing, that's why I say it's 50-50, because I'll look at both of them real quick. I need to know where the elbow goes, right? So if you look at the face on for Ben, and this explains his trace, right? So as he starts to move into impact, his right shoulder and his right elbow move too far back. So at that position in time, the right elbow is not gaining on target at all. Or right shoulder is not gaining on target, but right elbow is. So as you come down and I draw a line down from his elbow, that's pretty much where impact's going to occur. So he's going to be probably leaving divot at that point. Problem is his right shoulder's too far back. So he can't get his sternum from that position back up on top of the golf ball. So he's had to use a lot of lateral motion. So he's gonna move extremely hard laterally over to that side. And now the lateral is going to turn off and rotational. This is where people say, you're leaping. You're not leaping, you're actually pushing into the ground as hard as you can, and the ground is pushing you the other way. So the more force you can push into the ground, your body is going to lengthen. So all of a sudden the lateral stops, the up goes, but the around didn't follow. At this point in time, this didn't rotate, so this didn't come with it. That's why the trace runs high and then swings back to the heel late.
Interesting. That's amazing. So Dave Horn, do you know Dave Horn?
Yeah.
You know him. He's a great coach. He asked, can you change his right hand grip?
Yeah, I can. So do they want his right hand stronger or weaker?
I don't know, Dave, elaborate. And by the way, Kevin says, thank you for that amazing explanation of the elbow versus the shaft. Also, Mike, this is so cool to watch this golfer and for you to be able to click through all these different angles to see. This is just so cool. I mean, the behind and the overhead, and to have a conversation. Do you do this with your students? Like actually show them a video and talk about all the different things in the swing with the 4 video views?
So here's a typical lesson. Okay, just so everybody knows. When you come to see me, if you're not a current student, there's about 10 minutes. I pull up a chair and I sit down.
Okay.
As you hit and you tell me the woes of the world and why you can't do something or your golf ball's not doing what you want it to do, I'm watching.
Okay.
And so everything I teach is based on what I saw.
I'm going to remember this.
Okay, it must be based on what I saw. So you're explaining what's happening on the golf course. I'm looking at something. Then from there, I'm going to start to move into instruction. So I'm only going to show you what you need to see. For Ben, I'm going to show Ben a lot face on, and I'm going to show Ben a lot from behind.
Okay.
Because of it, just like little Jackson, they both move backwards. And so, there's a lot of theories of why it happens, but really it's because their legs are a lot stronger than their upper body. And so what's the functional movement pattern of the player? How can the player move? Where's the player restricted? Ben's hypermobile. Again, swings it extremely fast. Would I change his right hand? No, I don't think so.
So Dave replied and said, he replied and said, right hand under creates more elbow tuck, more on top is less.
Yeah, but I also can get more curve. So,
there you go.
So I can't get a curve in the left. So Ben used to have a really strong grip, right? Now he's also been playing golf for 3 years. So a typical day. I asked him today when he was here. I said, Ben, 3 years ago, how many golf balls did it take to play around the golf? And his reply was 2 boxes.
Now,
So
how
it took
many?
2 balls to get around, and now he's only got 3 in the bag. He never carries more than 3 in his bag.
I like it. I like it. That's awesome.
So it's totally different. So it's. I know there's a fault or a fix that it's easy to jump in and kind of fix mid game. But I think it's also important that, you know, whether a person's been with me for a day or two or coming from somebody else, I'm trying to figure out where they came from. And then when they're with me, they get my 2 cents. And it might be different than what the last guy said, but the last guy wasn't wrong. I think that's important for everybody. That I don't think you can be wrong. I think that you can move a student the wrong direction, yes. But at the same time, I don't think you're wrong. They're there for your information and your information only. So I don't get into the whole I'm better than this guy or he's better than this guy. It's why when you came to the studio, there's no pictures of current players or former players hanging up. That's why you don't see a big social media thing under my name. That's irrelevant. I don't like it. I've been asked to do it and I don't like it.
Well, we like bragging about how good you are. Hey, really quickly, Mike, when your students leave, like, so when Ben left this lesson, and I have a drill question, which is kind of my tie in here, but what are they doing? What do you give them to work on after? Are you sending them off with drills? Are you saying, you know, process the lesson, see you tomorrow? What is your sort of outside of the studio?
All right. So I'm gonna put this on live for a second.
Okay. I love it.
And then I'm just gonna show you, Ben's drill.
Okay.
And I apologize. I'll try to speak up. Right. So
we can hear you, Mike.
I gotta put this someplace, right? Yeah. So that's where I am with Ben. Right. So Ben's in this position, and I'm not as flexible as Ben. Right. But right now the drill that Ben's got to do is there's the center of mass of the shaft is going to be someplace in that area of the golf club. And so now I need Ben, as he makes his move left to get his hip going over his ankle going. I need him to make swings where he's trying to actually bring the club. I want the club to come back and hit the door at the same time. So I want him to try to get some rotation. So if he held the club out here in front of him like this, that's the drill I need him to do at home. Right? Unfortunately, he's moving his right shoulder blade down the wall this way, and I need it to exit away from the wall going this way. That's the drill that that's the drill Ben is working on. I'll do a little bit of that with a noodle or an obstruction in his way so that it can't exit more to the right. If I could get his trail shoulder to get through there a little bit more, it would probably be better. Yeah,
Seeing that from an overhead cam is really cool, by the way. That is so slick. I love it.
Yeah, so you can see where the shaft goes.
Yeah, that lighting on that camera is so cool. I mean, the V1 logo on the mat, just looking right up at us, just is awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's my sales pitch. I just need my logo someplace down here too.
I had to say something. You know me, I gotta brag about the technology, Mike.
You have to.
All right, let's see. Are we gonna see somebody else?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right, so you ready? All right.
Yes,
so
sir.
This is one of my COVID golfers, right? So he started about midway through COVID. At the time, I know he doesn't look it now, but at the time he was a little overweight and out of shape. Now he's done this 90-day freak out workout thing. so kind of a beginner, right? So I'm always going to show them the first things that I see. I'm gonna try to pick the white elephant in the room out, right? So as you can see, the trace doesn't match. It doesn't really match the video. You see the trace move in both directions right there.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the player is literally, his front foot's almost off the ground.
I know.
Right. And
Yeah.
so he's moved 7 inches right to the right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now as he comes back down, he's trying to, as hard as he can, and I may have this from overhead, maybe easier, but you'll see he's done better trying to get the shaft a little bit to lean a little bit forward with his 7-iron.
Mm-hmm.
But if he moves this way, he's going to have a tough time delivering the club from where his arms are. So the trace started good, right? I mean, it's not straight back, straight through, but it's moving in the right direction. But he's going to have a tough time getting his arm back out in front of his body. And so the trace that goes back at the end, it gets all squiggly over here. You can see it right here, how the trace kind of squiggles around right there at the end.
Can you put hover over that? I can see it. I just want to make sure you can actually see it right there in the.
Right here.
Yeah.
This part.
Yep.
And this is what I would do to him, right? I get this bigger than day for him. That's what I do.
Okay.
I try to make it as big as I possibly can, and then I show him. I say, hey, look, in the blue area, or just now below the blue area, I say, look, you got like a bird's nest going on. and then I explain to him, I say, the reason there's a bird's nest is because the left arm breaks down, right? The weight gets stuck, or the pressure gets stuck in an area while the club is still going through a pretty important area at impact. And so the left arm rides up his side. That's what causes it. Right here, where you see this little hiccup, can I draw a circle on here? Or does it go away, or what's the deal? Everybody see that area right there where there's a little hiccup right there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So that's because the right elbow is too far to the right of his body. It's behind his seam line on his shirt. So he's going to try to move that back over to the front. And the only way to do that is to spin your chest. So if you stood someplace and you tried to spin your chest, your weight's going to bounce forward, back, and then go forward again. So basically the arms have stopped swinging, right? So his arms aren't swinging from the top. He's holding the club at the top and he's spinning his body to get the club to move. So what is a very strong individual, he's getting about, probably 30% of his energy.
Mm.
So, for him, again, a drill that gets him back out of that is probably, I'm putting his feet together, which isn't going to show a good pressure trace.
Right.
But it's going to fix his arms. Then I'm just going to tell him, I'm going to say, okay, John, here's the deal. We're going to swing your arms down, and I just want to see how straight you can make the line. It's not going to be perfectly straight. The numbers to the right and left side of the screen and the numbers on the bottom of the screen, I don't care what they are. As a teacher, I just want people to understand, let's capture the trace and then go back in and you can nitpick anything later.
Right.
But get the biggest thing first all the time.
So Mike, do you have the after of this guy? This is a big, beefy, strong guy. Surely you got, I mean, he could, you probably made huge improvements in this trace. I gotta believe that.
So this
Well, that
was
looks better.
this was our drill, right? Just trying to get him to get it moving over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm like Ben. See, John does a really good job going toe to heel. So, I mean, if you think about it, Ben is the better golfer, but John actually uses his lead foot better. Does that make sense?
It does. I wonder if that's just because John is older, a little maybe more aware of his body. And I mean, clearly John is a beginner golfer. His swing doesn't look anywhere near Ben's athletic, slick. Right. We're talking about grip versus this doesn't look. Anyway, it's fascinating.
But see, the thing to me is, and this will answer some of the questions hopefully for people, but when do you use the pressure trace? Do you use it on beginners? Do you use it on, experts? Does it take somebody? No, all you're trying to do is repeat the trace. That's it. So the more you can repeat it and clean it up from going back and forth, zigzag patterns. I know there's Z trace and super Z trace and all that other stuff, but the reality is, can we get it to repeat?
Yep.
And that I think that's the biggest thing. That's I try to tune into as many of these as I can, and I think that's all I'm looking for is, hey, can people watch and just see a repetitive trace, or can they find a repetitive trace? That makes sense?
Fascinating that you say that. We had a presentation from our director of sports technology, and he said the same thing. He said the traces don't matter. The Z trace, the fishhook trace. He said, really, there's only one trace. It's the linear best trace that you can do that's repeatable for your golf game, right? I mean, period. And it's funny because I've been, selling this mat and trying to talk about to diagnose the trace and understand it. Well, it's fascinating that you look at the trace for your student, whether it's a guy that's athletic and older, but started golf 6 months ago versus a kid that is body is changing and growing, but really understands the golf swing. Those are two totally different traces and two totally different sets of data. I find it interesting. Hey, Mike, you work with a lot of really high level kids.
Yeah.
And we've talked about traces for kids being a little bit similar to long drivers and in the fact that they do come off the ground and they also change. Have you seen that? I mean, Jackson's tiny. He's probably hasn't changed much in his golf swing, but I'm assuming some of your other kids do. How do you deal with that? How do you kind of grow with them?
So again, I'm going to switch to live again. Okay. All right. So here's the thing that I would tell you. Anytime I have a student, right? So as the trace comes on, right? And I'm watching from overhead. So basically what I want the golfer to do is I want them to push left, go right, push left. So I'm sitting there doing this work, right? And one of the B1 guys, I forget who it was, it was big on the heel's the gas pedal and the toes the brake.
That's Terry Hash.
Yeah. So, and so I'm always messing around. So I'll get a student in here that, like this morning, and I've got a guy in here that that's the trace. That's his trace as he swings. So the line's very linear, it looks really good, but he can't hit it. So should he pay me because the line is great, or should he pay me because he can hit it? Right. So that's always one of my things. And I'm trying to get the player to play better golf. And so what people don't understand, and this is maybe too deep for today, but the center of mass of the human being is right here. And it is wrapped around your spine about an inch higher than your belly button. That's the center of the body's mass.
Wait, say that again, Mike. Say it again.
Okay, so the center of your mass, right? Center of the player's mass. I don't know where you can see. I stand up. The center of the player's mass is about an inch higher than their belly button. It's a little bit bigger than a grapefruit, and it's wrapped around your spine.
Okay.
That's the center of the player. Okay. So the best players in the world, the center of mass does not move right for the right-handed golfer at all. Zero. Zero. So when you're looking at pressure max, right, the pressure's moving, but my center of mass did not move. My center of mass rotated, but it didn't move to the right. Okay, so I'm rotating and my center of mass is there. Now for me to strike the ground ahead of the golf ball, after I hit the golf ball, I'm gonna touch the ground. In order for me to do that, I'm moving my sternum and my center of mass to the strike point. Okay, so that's why you can see players where it looks like they're squatting. I tell people they're not squatting. The club is moving to the right, right? Club right there is moving to the right. Now the club's moving to target. As the club starts to move to target, the player moves to target. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you'll see a little bit of that, and then the club's going to start to come down, and then this is where my juniors, they go into that, right? They're either way up on their toes. The way I teach my high-end juniors is one, I never tell them that there's a way to swing the golf club. Okay. I tell them there may be a more efficient way for them to swing their golf club. There is no perfect way. The guy that won the Masters is not Adam Scott or Justin Rose, right? So
Yep.
The best swing didn't win the Masters. Okay. The guy that gets it in the hole first and with the least amount of shots, that's who wins. So,
Yep.
you know, I think that different people do it different ways. I looked for a video, and I probably got it at my home computer. Parker Rostowski was the #1 junior in Georgia a year ago before he committed to Georgia, and now is transferring to USC. So we'll probably be doing a lot of online stuff and stuff like that. But when he would move left, his whole body would tilt left. And everyone told me that needed to come out of his swing. But then you watch him play golf. And so, you know, if I had taken it out, I may have made him worse. His trace is very linear, right? And then impact, he jams his lead toe, his left toe, he's a right-handed golfer, he jams his left toe into the ground and he pushes as hard as he can to move his left hip backwards and around. And so it goes quickly into the heel. So it's a bang, bang thing that happens.
It's fascinating how you're communicating that, Mike. You know, we've always heard get to the lead edge faster at impact and as much weight in your heel. And I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm hearing this wrong, but it sounds like you want to get to the toe and then to the heel as fast as you can through the downswing.
Yeah,
is that right?
Well, if I want to turn, right? So if I want to move my body in any way, shape, or form, I don't know where you can see me or anything, but if I want to move my feet, or if I want to turn my body, if I'm standing right here and I want this hip to go this way, right? The force that's applied to the ground is going to be me putting pressure into my right toe. And literally curling my right toe and pushing my hip over. So as I move over this way, now there's more to my toe.
Yep, because you got to rotate around. I get it.
My toe that way, it's going to jump it into the heel. So, you know, now a lateral player is not going to do that. A lateral player is going to ride the toe.
Yeah.
And then you just, I mean, then it becomes watching divot patterns and doing things like that. And whether they can sustain it.
Yeah.
You got to remember, it's got to work more than once.
Yeah, repeatable.
Yeah, it's got to be repeatable. So if the player can ride that out, you know, I used to work with a guy that played on tour. I used to say he had the best flip on tour because he was an early releaser and made a living on tour flipping. So, and yet everyone told me he had to improve his impact. And by the time he finally improved his impact, he, you know, after he improved it, he lost his tour card. So,
So you have really taught us a lot about pressure and how easy it is to communicate that to students, regardless of traces, but based on what they can repeat. I think I've learned that use the pressure mat to show students what they can do that's repeatable for their own self. But I have really learned a ton tonight for the first time in, I think, 45 traces, Mike, about how great video feedback is when you're using an overhead and a behind the golfer camera. I mean, just watching you do those drills and seeing how much you can see the sway or the movement and the behind the golfer camera, that is the coolest thing. I think I'm going to set my pressure mat up and my one camera, but only film myself from behind. I mean, that is,
it's weird.
Amazing.
If you put I always tell people, if you put a piece of tape down your shirt, right down your spine, and you filmed it from behind, you would see where your spine's moving, right? And if your spine's tilted to the right, you can't impact the ground to the left of the ball.
yeah. When you look at a face on video, you're looking at the pressure, you're looking at the club, you're looking at all this other stuff, but really, I mean, when what we're talking about is the movement and swaying and trying to get the pressure offsetting correctly, it should be. I'm blown away. I think it's so cool. So thank you for showing that.
My kids get on the pressure mat at 6 or 7
years old.
Right. That's when I introduce. Yeah, that's when I introduce the pressure mat to them.
Okay.
So if they come to a Saturday clinic or something like that, I mean, honestly, that's what I'm going to introduce it to them. I'm going to say, hey, can we make the ball move around? And before pressure mats, I used the Wii Swing Fit or whatever it was called, Get Fit or whatever that board was, and it would just move that ball around. You know, hey, can we move the ball to the left? Can we move the ball to the right? What did you have to do with your feet? Did your feet move? Did they not move? That's what it is. And it doesn't have anything to do with age. It doesn't have anything to do with skill level. The number one skill that people can't perform is skipping. They can't skip.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, the mat measures, I see a question there. There are 3 graphs. The mat measures the pressure mapping, right? Which is what Mike was showing. It also has a dynamic vertical force and yes, the linear velocity. So those 3 graphs are all there and you can just hide them or of course show them and have a conversation about them.
I hide them.
Yeah.
But they're
hey,
there.
I have one quick screen share I want to show you. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's little Jackson, and I
had to show this picture because he was supposed to be with us tonight, and this kid is one of the coolest golfers. I think he practices more than anybody I've ever met. But I got to visit with him, and so I wanted to show that since he didn't end up joining us tonight.
Yeah, and so for little Jack, that is. Because even you said the day you watched him on the pressure mat, obviously had just broken one of his toes. So you were like, hey, he's too much in his heel. He's too much in his heel. And then that's when I was like, okay, Jack, oh, you broke your toe.
Well, thank you, Mike, for at the very last minute of our webinar for telling my boss that I was over there in your academy trying to teach you how to, or trying to help you teach golf, because they don't let me do that.
Come anytime. Come anytime. Everybody's welcome. Well, I mean, I'm not.
I know we love having you in the family. Thank you for being here for 20 years. And I know I am personally, and I see some other comments over here, blown away by your setup and the value of the behind and overhead camera. Pretty spectacular. Let's see, when he mentioned the golfer pushing hard off his toe, that is a strong lateral pressure component. Sure.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Mike,
just watching them, it really is. I tell people, get a pressure mat, screw around with it for a few months before you try it out on somebody, because the last thing you want to do is let them think that there's a perfect trace. You know, I will tell you this, the best players in the world are high on the way back and low on the way through. So it doesn't stay on that line. It'll work toe to heel, but then it'll go under the line. You know, the best players in the world are under the line. The everyday amateur is over the line. That has to do with you know, your hips, your hip girdle, things like that. It's not just sticking your butt out. There's a lot of things that happen. So, you know, asking someone to do that or telling them to push their butt out more when they come down, there's a lot of other things that happen. So I would steer clear of telling people to be perfect on the mat.
well, there is no real perfect, right? I mean, come on.
Right.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you are very humble, but I am putting your website in the chat window in case folks want to find you. Mike is always at Marietta Country Club, just north of Atlanta. And you got to take a cart, but go right to the back of the range, and he's fine if you walk in and check out what he's doing. That's what we do. We interrupt him. And Mike, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing this information. You're really high level pressure mat instructor, well, instructor to begin with, but I would really love for you to come back. Everyone wants you to come back again because you've taught us so much. So hopefully we can do this again in a few months.
Yeah. If I come back, I want to do live. I want to do a live lesson.
I would love that.
I think, and then anyone can throw their 2 cents in, and look, my student can be the guinea pig. We'll do anything y'all want to do to move it around. But I think when it's live and there's no second guessing, it's easy at the end of the night for me to look at a trace and go, God, I missed that. But for the most part, when they're live and they're going and the drills are happening pretty quick, time flies.
It's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. I would love to see that and the changes you make on the fly. Yeah. And I wanted, you know, some of my script, it was questions for Jackson, because I wanted to see, you know, I was going to say, all right, Mike, give Jackson this. And then I wanted to ask Jackson, right. Jackson, what did you hear? How does that feel? And I would love to have that perspective. And right. So we would totally appreciate you or your student doing that. And my girls are definitely.
I think that's the best way to learn. Right. Is hey, throw the student in there and just let them answer some questions, because they're the one ultimately that we're trying to get to play better golf or get to enjoy golf more, however you want to word it.
Yeah. And understand what we're saying, right? What the data is presenting. So, anyway.
I don't really care if Jackson says I made the ball move the right way. Sure. That's great. Let's move on.
That's hilarious. Well, thank you, Mike. It's a few minutes after 8. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know you're going to be there bright and early, and you're the best. If you need anything, you know where to find me.
All right. Go sell some 4 camera systems.
You no kidding. I mean, if anybody's paying attention, that's what everybody needs to do. Let me know. Call me up.
I'm ready to go to 8. I'm ready to go to 8.
Heck yeah. Let's put some on the ground for club fitting and putting and stuff, right?
Yeah. I get weary about that one that goes out front.
Yeah.
I get weary about that. All right.
The baseball guys say the same thing.
Yeah, I just get nervous. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Berning. It was wonderful to talk to you tonight. And everyone, thanks for joining us. Have a great Tuesday.